my own Twitch changed back before I properly start introducing us, which is now the case. So, welcome everybody for this early morning or late night live podcast interview discussion we do for the AC Sisterhood anniversary. I will give now the word to Six Keys so she can introduce what we're going to do today.
Hello, everybody. So, we usually do podcasts in our little community, which is the AC Sisterhood or Assassin's Creed Sisterhood. I'm usually the podcast host there, but I am new to streaming, so I'm a little bit nervous, as I'm sure many of us are. But let's hope it all goes okay. Um, so, the reason that we decided to arrange this event, this streaming event, is to discuss the ongoing issues of sexism and abuse in the gaming industry. And Ubisoft is unfortunately one of those companies that has also been affected by these issues. In the summer of 2020, last year, many stories broke out about these widespread problems with sexism and abuse in the gaming industry. Uh, the higher ups at Ubisoft promised changes, and some have been implemented over the course of the last year. However, many current and former employees have felt these changes haven't been enough. And some people who were named in the abuse allegations as perpetrators are still employed at the company, and some have even received promotions in the time since. Lately, more similar news have started coming out from other companies like Activision Blizzard and even some smaller indie developers. So, this is an industry wide problem, not just one company. But we are all members of various Ubisoft communities, and we hope that by talking about these issues openly, we can help change along. So, firstly, let's all introduce ourselves. Um, how about starting with Angie?
Well,
Can you tell us a little?
hello.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and which community you're from and what do you do?
Yeah, well, those who know me the most will know me as an artist. I've been in the community for many years, in fact, since Assassin's Creed 2. So I've been for a very long time here, and I'm pretty much invested in some way or another in all the communities. But I'm most active in the Assassin's Creed 1. And I'm also very active in the Ghost Recon and, well, not as much, but a little more, in the Rainbow Six Siege, in which I'm part of the Delta Company from the first, and in the Siege Champions from the second.
All right. Thank you for that. And Dulka Mara.
Howdy. So, I'm Dul Kamara. I'm a Rainbow Six Siege star player and champion, which means I'm in the champion program, not that I'm good at the game. I was super invested in Ubisoft communities. I used to play a lot of Assassin's Creed, especially the multiplayer. I love and I miss the multiplayer dearly. I used to run several accounts dedicated to Assassin's Creed and Assassin's Creed multiplayer. And I'm the one who translated the whole scandals, all the articles by the French journalists into English for an international coverage for my fellow star players. And yeah, that's about it. I'm an artist, by the way. I draw comics, gaming comics, mostly Rainbow Six Siege and Destiny and Assassin's Creed. And that's it.
And thank you. And English Butter. Are you there? Sorry, I can't hear English Butter at the moment. Um, How about Vanade? Or sorry, I keep saying Vanade, but it's Vanade.
No worries. Hey everyone. So I'm Vinade. I'm also a fan artist. Like many of us here, I initially got my start with Ubisoft communities with Assassin's Creed back in 2013. But since then, I've been involved and doing a lot of fan art for all kinds of Ubisoft games, mainly for Watch Dogs, Far Cry, and a little bit of Starlink. Battle for Atlas. So I am a Far Cry star player, and I also moderate the Watch Dogs Discord and subreddit, as well as the Starlink Discord and subreddit. But I would say my most active Ubisoft community is definitely Watch Dogs.
All right, thank you. I'm not sure if English. Can you hear us? Are you on mute? English butter? It seems she can hear us, but we can't hear her. We'll sort that out.
Wait, did that work? Is
Uh,
this working?
Can you say something?
Hello?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, cool. So I was talking before and then I heard other people and I was like, shit. Okay. Cool. So should I do my introduction now?
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. So I'm Butter. I first got started in the Ubi communities in 2016 when I first played Assassin's Creed 2. And then when For Honor came out in 2017, I kind of like hopped over from Assassin's Creed. And I got started doing my drawings in late 2017. I've done some collaborations with Ubisoft with art, which has been put into For Honor twice now. And earlier this year, I was invited to the Mentors Guild program for Assassin's Creed, and that's my rundown. Yeah.
Thank you. And we have Mab.
Good morning. I'm Mab. I'm Division Templants is the Division community member. I do cosplay for this license. I also play almost every Ubisoft title you can think of, including Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, etc. And that's about it. I'm a star player, but we don't have something like the Mentors Guild or Siege Champion for the division. So
Okay, thank you. And then we have Kulpreet.
Hi everybody, so I'm Kulpreet Verdi and I'm active in the Assassin's Creed community. I was a star player back in 2014. I had to really think about when that was then. And I'm also part of the Mentors Guild program for Assassin's Creed, and I'm also the founder of AC.
Not sure if that was cut off, but it was, yes, AC Sisterhood. Can you tell us a little bit about the AC Sisterhood, actually? We have several members from that today here.
Yes, of course. So, like Six has said, we've got several members who are involved with AC Sisterhood on this stream. And AC Sisterhood was founded last year in light of the awful news that broke about Ubisoft around the abuse of employees and community members. And the AC Sisterhood has several goals in mind. So we celebrate, highlight and uplift women in the community and also at Ubisoft as well. And really importantly, we also help to create a safe space for women and minorities. So we have our Discord, which is absolutely fantastic, and the applications are now live. So if you do want to join us, then you can. And also, AC Sisterhood is also there as a means to hold Ubisoft accountable for the mistakes that they've made over the years. So, and that is really important actually. And we want to see accountability from Ubisoft, and AC Sisterhood is a way that we can help to try and push for that.
Yes, thank you. And just to point out, just because it's called AC Sisterhood doesn't mean that it's not also open to non-binary people and men as well.
Absolutely.
It's just all people who support the values and ideas that we stand for. And of course, we have Sunny as well, who the host of this stream. She is from the Sisterhood, and Angie is in the Sisterhood, and myself.
Yeah,
So
and I would say you have now asked everyone to introduce yourself, but how about you, Six?
well, I already mentioned that I'm mostly active. Like I do podcast hosting for the Sisterhood. We have a podcast called AC Sisterhood Speaks, which can be found on our YouTube channel, and we're also on Spotify and iTunes. Shameless plug. And I'm also a moderator on the Discord and an admin. And I sometimes do art, rarely these days, but that's about it from me. What about you? You are also active in the Immortals Phoenix Rising community.
Yeah, indeed. I'm a moderator for the Immortals Phoenix Rising Discord. I have also, well, done various cooperations with them, for example, for the BCRF charity stream we held in March.
Which was awesome.
It was awesome, yes. But yeah, mainly my main community is the Assassin's Creed community, where I'm also a moderator among various communities. Also a moderator for the official Discord, as well as for the AC Sisterhood.
I think we've already. I think we've now all introduced ourselves, so we can kind of get into the reason we're all here today, and some questions and get some discussion going. So feel free to jump in. I'm not gonna like call you out individually, but you can just like give your opinions about the questions that I'm going to ask in general. So, when did you all first hear about these widespread problems with sexism and abuse in the gaming industry in general and at Ubisoft? Was that last year when the news started breaking out?
Yeah, for me it was. It was the first time that we sort of heard about all this was, of course, when the news broke about Ashraf Ismail and his affairs with several women. He used his status at Ubisoft as a like game director to instigate these affairs. And then what happened?
He was the creative director for Assassin's Creed 4 and Valhalla, or the
Yes.
yes.
And then after those allegations came out, then other people started to step forward to say like he had also come to them, and then they also named other people at Ubisoft to say that we've had problems with XYZ people, and then it sort of snowballed from there. And that was the first time that it sort of came to light what was going on, for me at least. That was sort of like the first big blow up.
I think mine was the first time was with Riot in 2017. I know that was a big deal at the time, and then it also just kind of got buried. And then I think shortly before the Ubisoft stuff came out, there was kind of a Me Too movement within the Destiny content creators on Twitter. So I don't know if that had any kind of like avalanche effect on people coming out about Ubisoft people. I can't really remember if there was a link, but I know they were like close in time.
Yeah, it did. It totally did. Yeah, a streamer was accused in the Destiny community, big name apparently, and it all snowballed from here. But to me, sexism as a whole in like gaming communities and in communities, not development, always been there. We used to joke about it because in the end it's just entertainment, but when I realized how it plagued the industry, I was really shocked. I mean, not surprised, but shocked it was still a thing in the, like 2020. Seriously.
I think that's an issue, isn't it? The sexism in the communities. It's almost as if it's expected and we just have to deal with it. And that's the attitude that really has to change. And like you say, it's 2021 and we're still experiencing it and it's not right.
Unfortunately, it does sort of surprise a lot of people, including me, about how prevalent this still is, because for the first time, Wolfie knows this, about like 2-3 weeks ago, I got my first sort of like harassment in For Honor when I was playing, and someone like came to like was talking to me over the voice chat, and they said something really disgusting, and I was like, this is not sort of like, it wasn't a sort of like, oh, you're playing bad. It was like a, no, I know that you are female and I'm going to target that. And it was gross. And I was quite sad as well. I was like, that's 4 years of me having no problems with this community. And that's just gone down the toilet. So that was upsetting.
I'm actually curious, since we are from such different communities, we're all sort of in our own bubbles and don't necessarily know the general feeling of other Ubi communities. How would you say the For Honor community, for example, is in general towards women?
Um, I think it really depends on where you look. When I talk to random people, like in game, we sort of like, we're in the same lobbies for a few games, then we start chatting about like, oh, like, do you want to like just um like group up and do some of like our orders for the day? And usually I've never had a problem with that, but if you go to places like the For Honor subreddit, then you can definitely see that there's issues there. I think the biggest one that I can think of, or maybe like the biggest two I can think of, was one that was originally, I think it was back in like 2017 or 2018, that when one of the, I guess it's sort of like when you kill somebody in For Honor, you get the chance under the right circumstance to perform an execution on them. And one of the ones that really kind of like irked me was one of the female characters gets like her boobs grabbed and it's
Yes,
treated
I
as a
know.
joke,
I know
and
the
that
one.
really sort of like sat uncomfortable with me. And then what eventually happened was that they changed that execution, so the hands go on the shield, on her shield now, rather than on her boobs. And people were really upset by this change, and you can still see people really upset by this change every so often. They go like, oh, remember that Valkyrie boob grab execution? They changed it because they're cowards. And I left a comment on the original thread when this change was announced, and I got downvoted to hell just by saying, look, I agree with the change. I wasn't super comfortable with the original execution. Man, I got dogpiled on saying, how dare you, you're just sensitive, blah, blah, blah. And the second example I can think of was last year when they released new heroes. One of the first new hero they released last year was gender lock female. And people were really upset by this, as saying, oh, well, I want to play as a man, blah, blah, blah. And then the next hero that came out was gender locked male. Nothing. There was no upset by this. It was really, like, I don't know if it was just because this dude was a dude, or if it was because people were getting used to the idea of just like the one gender lock hero. But I think it was like a mix of both. But it was really made me think that if it had been the other way around, if the gender lock male come out first and then the gender lock female, what would have happened? I don't know, it just sat strangely with me, and every so often I still see, and it gets really sort of like, yeah, but I don't know if that's a better example.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we sometimes in the AC community we talked about, you know, people. We've had like, I don't even know, 10, 12, what is it at this point? Titles with solely male protagonists, and two now where you can choose your gender. Not even gender locked to female, but I'm always curious, like if we had a game where we are locked into playing a female character, and then you would get the next year you would get another game with a gender locked woman. Would would people complain about that? Because they never complained when we have 10 games in a row with a gender locked male. It's like they tend to be fine when it's one game, like Liberation, Assassin's Creed Liberation. They were fine with that because it was a smaller game. It had a female character, but it was on PS Vita, so not that many people got to experience it. So they were sort of fine with that, like, okay, whatever. But would they be equally fine if it was woman after woman after woman, like we had with the men?
I think the biggest problem with that is just because, like, the man is seen as like the default, and any
Yes.
mix up from that is, I don't want to say radical, but it's kind of radical.
So what
Especially
about-
if you establish this baseline of men, and then you get, like the double protagonists like Jacob and Evie, or you can pick Cassandra or Alexios, or you can pick male Eivor or female Eivor.
Kulpreet, you were going to say?
Yeah, and I think that also plays into the general lack of awareness of some players as well, because the argument that I see all the time when we're talking about women protagonists is, well, the player base is mostly male, so it has to be a male protagonist. And that kind of really wants to make me tear my hair out, because if you look at stats and you look at the general like how many women are playing games now, like it's not like massively in favor of of men anymore, and that has to be reflected in the games that are coming out. And there are so many indie games and also bigger AAA titles out now, like Horizon, for example, which have done so well. And that, I mean, when you're having these conversations with these types of people, those kind of facts just kind of go over their heads. So I think it's just the general kind of the awareness that the player base is more equal now. It's not just men playing these games, so that argument doesn't really stand.
And the narrative sort of used to be that whenever these studies would come out, that the player base was split pretty equally, like that at some point it was like 50% or 60% male and 40% female, and people would give the justification like, oh well, maybe women are playing games, but they're just like mobile games, Candy Crush. But now they've done more studies, and it's still pretty split equally, even when they're just focusing on like AAA titles and what I think most hardcore gamers would think when they think about video games. So that narrative doesn't exactly fly anymore either.
It reminds me, when I was a star player in 2019, there was one guy on social media who complained when we took a picture of all the Rainbow Six Siege star player, and it was like 80% ladies, and one guy made a fuss about how it wasn't representative at all, and I don't know, thinking maybe there was feminist agenda behind all of this, and saying, I mean, imagine ladies playing Rainbow Six Siege, right? He was such a clown, and he really upset every single big name fan in the community, and it was a massive how can I say it politely, sad event for the community.
And that does sort of make me wonder that if it was the other way around, if it was like 80% of the star players were male, nothing would have been said at all.
No.
Yep.
I think that part of that is what's so frustrating to me, is that it's always seen as pandering. Like whenever it's a female character, oh, it must be pandering to like the feminists or like the small percent of females to them. It's never like, it's the same people who say that they just want a good story or whatever, but they can never think about just putting themselves in the shoes of a female character, because they automatically assume that her story is going to be about like feminism or something that they can't relate to. It's like this, like the misogyny is there because I mean, we relate just fine to male characters that we play. We've been playing games with male character protagonists this whole time with no issues. So it's really like, I just want to tell them to get over themselves. Like, we are here, we're gamers, we have been playing games this whole time. You should be able to enjoy game media with any like gender of character, because the entire point is that it's a storytelling experience. And like, you're so immature for just being sexist and being like, no, I'm not going to play this game because it's a girl character. And if I could just segue into like Far Cry, because Far Cry 6 also has a choice of protagonist now with Danny that can be female or male, but it will be voiced. And unlike the marketing for the past Assassin's Creed games that had the choice where they pushed the male option, so far for Far Cry 6, it's been exclusively marketing the female Danny. And so, I mean, there are still like the few people that you'll hear who are upset about that and like, oh, tell me there's a choice because I don't want to play as a woman. But then I'm kind of like heartened that the majority of the player base, it seems like, at least from, you know, like the Discord community, kind of like accepted it, and almost they're being pushed towards playing female Danny because they've seen more of her. So it's really confirming what we've been saying all along, which is marketing is what, like, if you're going to market to appeal to the misogynists, then that's what your player base is going to be composed of. And if you market like the female character more, you're going to get more people wanting to play the female character, is what I think, at least. So that's been good.
I was actually
It does make me
curious.
wonder. Sorry.
That's one thing that they did with Phoenix Rising as well, that they, after the whole AC Valhalla, cluster F with only focusing on the male Eivor, they sort of took a different approach with Phoenix Rising and focused more on the female character, which was nice to see. And I think people were
And
generally cool with her.
I
Yeah,
think
I mean, I kind of roll my. Oh, there's so many people.
you want to go first?
I just want to add, like, I don't know, when Ubisoft does that for like their games that are new franchises or don't have like an established fan base, I kind of am like, oh, you're like throwing us a bone. But so for like Far Cry, because it's a AAA franchise, and I feel like there are a lot of, like, I don't want to say the fandom is toxic, but it's certainly the people that are in it, like, I wouldn't immediately see them as like beacons for feminism, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like a toxic fan base, but I was expecting it to be worse, like the reaction to be worse. So for them to do this for Far Cry 6 is like, I think it shows me that there was like, maybe their intentions were still shady, I don't know, but it shows me that they have more, like, they were willing to take that risk for like a big selling franchise.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say at first, because I was really surprised when Far Cry offered the choice and also pushed the female option in the game. And as far as I know, like, or as I expected, or not really expected, but I thought of Far Cry more like, well, more appealing to male gamers. And I was really interested how the fan base would react when they presented us Danny as a female choice. And I'm really surprised and happy that you say with the that Ubisoft pushed the marketing for the female character, and that voices or like concerns have actually, well, toned down and people are, well, accepting her.
Yeah. Something I just want to add on to that with marketing and going back to Horizon really quickly. One of the constant things I see when people talk about Aloy's story is that going, oh, she's cool, she's badass, and nothing is really said about her being female. It's all about just how cool the story is. And it does make me wonder if, like, just how much role the marketing does play into these perceptions about, like, oh, it's going to be like a feminist story, or if it's just going to be this. And it does make me think as well about the marketing for Odyssey and the stats that came out for how the percentage of the player base that picked Alexios over Cassandra. I think it was something like 2/3 of the player base picked Alexios over Cassandra. And then if you look at the marketing for Odyssey, every single poster I saw during 2018 was for Alexios. Like, I think it was something like 13 statues of Alexios were made, and one was made of Cassandra, and it was the worst statue. It was just sort of shocking. And it's
Infuriating,
really
really.
upsetting.
I think
And
for the
voice,
marketing,
the voice actress for female Eivor in Valhalla had to announce that she was performing in this game
yeah.
via the reveal of a pin and a collectible.
It was
Like
so
she didn't
sad.
even have an image of her character.
No,
And she's the main protagonist.
as a small fact, it took like 3 months for them to announce that female Eivor actually existed, and it was a choice for the
Yeah.
players, and it was so bad.
And she's the canon protagonist.
Yeah, that's the
Exactly.
worst. That's the worst. Like it took 3 months. And like, didn't you think like maybe not the same day because well, it's a little late, but I don't know, a week later or 2 or 3, I don't know, but don't take that time to announce that you have actually another choice for the players.
I think just the marketing in general for Valhalla was just handled very, very badly. I mean, I think a lot of us on this stream probably, and in the chat, probably tuned into that 8-hour art announcement for Valhalla. I think the concept of that reveal was amazing. It was great, but then I think there was a collective like, ugh, that's the only way I can describe it when we saw the beard appear. Because
Yes.
we were all so like my timeline on Twitter was going mad because we were like, it's finally happening. It's finally happening. They're doing a female protagonist. We're gonna have her this time round. And then they added the hair and the beard, and it was just kind of a collective like,
Are you
not this
serious?
again.
The
Yeah.
energy
Sort of
in the
feel,
chat just
yeah.
deflated.
Absolutely. And
Like
that
everybody
was
was so excited throughout the whole thing. It was like 3 hours long or something like that.
No,
Or
it was
maybe even
8
more.
8 hours
Oh
long.
yeah,
8
yeah. It was
And in the end,
hours.
I
really
was
long.
like,
I had to go
what
to
the
bed
hell?
like pretty early on, but I think I was around for long enough to see the beard appear, and I was like, oh no.
Now it's
remember-
time for bed.
I would remember eating and having lunch and watching the stream like I'm going to watch the stream until the very end. And when it reached the end, I was like, okay, my joy has disappeared. I'm disappointed. I don't want to know anything. I don't want to do anything more because I'm just so disappointed in overall. Like I spent 8 hours of my life for this because it was promising and that detail was like destroy everything. But anyway, if you allow me, this is another little fact that kinda embarrasses me. I was the first, if I'm not wrong, unless someone else posted another fan art elsewhere, or I don't know. I was the first to make the first female Eivor fan art, and it was since there was no announcement about them or her existence or anything. People were using my fan art to promote Eivor, which was very sad because it was the only content they had to get excited about Eivor. It was so
And that's really
disappointing.
sad. Because there were no assets, were there? There were no assets for
that's
her
why
at all.
when they saw my final, it was like, oh, there she is. Now we can use it. I was like, but it's just a fan art. Yeah, but she isn't anywhere. So we had, we need something to get excited about the game. It was so sad.
And I
think
it
as a
just makes it
community,
worse.
Sorry, no, carry on.
I was saying, I just think it makes it worse that even if you pick like the let the animus decide option, you spend most of the time playing as her.
Yeah.
So it's just like an extra slap in the face. It's like, are you
No, I
joking?
mean, once you
Ugh.
start playing the canon version of the game, it's just like a constant reminder that things have been done very bad. In that she is important. She is as equally important as Javi,
Mhm.
and she was pushed away from the spotlight. for, well, for you know what reason.
It's more of the same.
I wanted to ask, going back to the topic of like how much awareness there is in your communities, because I imagine there's, there are some people who are like, oh, I don't want to hear about all this depressing stuff. Let me just play games, keep politics out of my games. Um,
Same.
how much do people in your communities talk about this stuff? Like,
I
is it
mean,
like, are they sort of
for
ignoring it, or do you
the
feel
Rainbow Six Siege community, yeah, mostly ignoring it. I remember a girl made a video about her experience in the game as soon as she started talking, because Siege is a tactical shooter, so you have to give callouts to your mates, like this character, this person is behind the wall, this guy is planting here, and you really have to give callouts or it just doesn't work. It's tactical. So she made a video about how she played, and every time, not every time, but in the video, every time she was trying to give callouts, like good callouts and important informations to win the game, she was threatened in the chat, or people would just cut her, like when she was trying to talk, like, oh, are you a girl? Are you a girl? Are you a girl? I'm gonna rape you. Get back to the kitchen. And since there is friendly fire in Rainbow Six Siege, they even team killed her for a few rounds because she was a girl and she talked in voice chat to give intel, and she kept being trash talked and team killed, and in the end she won the game. She was MVP, most valuable player, but still she was bullied all game long for just being a girl, and it's so annoying. And when this came out, big name fan, casters, devs were very vocal about toxicity towards women, sexism, etc. But it really needs a scandal every time. It really needs a triggering event. Otherwise, people just don't care. And they also wanted to make an all-female pro league program, but I mean, they didn't know if it was discriminatory, of if it was a good idea or not. But usually we just don't talk about sexism. It's just people shrug it off like, yeah, it's a game, who cares? Toughen up, nerd. Some communities have it worse. We're toxic and we're proud of it. So sometimes it's really tiring. I never play Rainbow Six Siege on my own ever because I don't want to talk. I don't want to raise my voice. People will either think I'm a teenager or see that I'm a girl and I might get bullied. So yeah.
About the Rainbow Six Siege, I remember there's a controversy in the Brazilian league because I don't know if there was a teammate missing for one of the teams in the esports, but they choose one of the female players from one of the teams because there's also women teams in another league. And there was like a massive controversy because someone leaked a private conversation in which the players were like talking about how they didn't want women in there or those female players in their team because they were bad. And it's like, since did you play with them in the first place or anything? And it was really big because it was like we're trying to bring awareness and more exposure for the women in the league so they can have sexual opportunities, and you're just going around trying to make some kind of plan to not allow them to enter into your team because they're bad or
Yeah.
supposedly bad. It's
Women bad, period. That's kind of the motto. And also, speaking of sexism and Brazil, I remember there was a big event in Brazil at some point, and one of the caster is a lady, or she's maybe just I don't remember her role exactly, but she's like she looks gorgeous, she's super sexy, and people in the chat seeing her were just the chat was just a cringe fest of sexist comments and very loud comment about her. And It's like
Yeah,
this all
no,
the time.
Brazil in overall. Oh my gosh, I'm going to. I don't want to, trigger or anything, but in the esports world, when it comes to Brazil, on the chats in the Twitch or on everything, the Brazilian fans, not all of them, obviously, because some of them are really respectful and all that, but in overall they're very toxic and even sexist. In fact, besides what you explained, when all this controversy with the women in the league and all that, they were constantly harassing the players and trying to push them away so they didn't join. And when their team lost, it was really bad because they started harassing casters, the players, the devs, everyone that they didn't like. And it's just a reminder that there's a lot to change. Which, by the way, there was a in the latest invitational, there was a trans woman in the casters. I don't think you do remember, Luca.
Uh,
A trans. I don't remember. I don't remember her name, but it was a really big thing because she was the first trans woman, getting into the spotlight. And it was, well, there was some controversy around because there's
oh,
some
I
people like,
remember.
yeah, there were some people who were like, oh no, this walk shit again, trying to push,
Yeah, so some
how
guy
they
was
act.
super
But
rude
in
about it. I
overall,
remember.
everyone was very supportive in overall, and it was really amazing. Like, for once, things are working really well, and they aren't attacking her into oblivion.
Yeah, it's true that mostly when a shitstorm happens about sexism or homophobia, transphobia, the general fandom on social media, they will clap back real hard at everyone who's trying to be hateful. Big names will step up and will trash them and shut them down like real quick.
Oh, okay. Captain Fluke. Okay, now I
Yeah,
remember.
that's her. Yeah, but
She was
yeah,
amazing.
I didn't follow the whole thing. I only saw the controversy on social media, and I was glad to see. But it's always the same. People wait for a controversy or a shitstorm to actually do something and speak up. And sometimes I just wish they would be allies and listen, not make it about themselves and how they can shine on social media, but more just just listen to women and to people who have issues in the community, and instead of just jumping on the train to say something.
Yeah, it's part of what I've been seeing, sort of in reaction to the especially the Activision Blizzard revelations lately, is a lot of people, especially men, expressing shock every time when these stories come out, and women sort of reacting to that with, don't be shocked, just do something, because it's like there's just this, women experience this all the time, not just in gaming, but like everywhere. No matter where you work, in our free time, we just feel it on a whole different level. Um, and like men it feels like they need evidence every time that this happens. Like what you mentioned about, like, the player who was harassed in voice chat, that she was like, she had video of herself uh, getting all these terrible comments, and it was only shock because people actually saw it happening. Like, it wasn't enough that she, if she would have just told people, hey, this happens to me all the time. It's like people have to see video or else they don't believe you.
Yeah, and when you bring up toxicity in the Rainbow Six Siege fandom, either people are proud of it, like, yeah, we're toxic, deal with it, or it's just toughen up, nerd. Some communities have it worse. Yeah, but you're not. We'd have to deal with the issue. We don't just shrug it off. Some people forget that video games are, excuse me for the F-bomb, but fucking entertainment.
Yes.
We shouldn't be. I mean, I've got hate messages on Rainbow Six that made me feel bad for a whole day or a whole night. And it's entertainment. We shouldn't be at each other's throat for a missed shot, or it's just entertainment. Please be nice. Come on.
And this is not just, bullying like schoolyard stuff, which I think a lot of people sort of undersell it with those comments like, oh, just toughen up, it's just banter. It's not
Yeah.
banter when you get like rape threats or death threats.
Right? Just for giving callouts in a game where you have to give bloody callouts.
And some people do go far, you do have stalkers, people who get obsessed with women, for whatever reason, and they like dox them and, threaten their families and all this awful stuff.
Yeah.
It's not bullying, it's more.
Yeah, it's much
No.
more.
And I think people think, if it's not happened to me, then it's not happening, which that's just the wrong attitude to have. And from my personal experience, when, the sisterhood was announced, I had so much, crap from people in my inbox. I had people sending me like anime rape scenes. I had death threats, all of this just for even trying to speak up. And it's almost as if like when I was genuinely talking about, I am getting this sort of behavior aimed at me, I used to get some people responding to that saying, oh, well, you just got to deal with it. Like, it's just part of being part of a community. And it's like, why should that just be accepted? Like, we can't just accept that. You have to, I mean, by challenging it, you're trying to change it. So, and I just feel like you can't take the stance that just because it's not happening to you, it's not happening to other people. And it's just that whole piece around awareness, because a lot of what the sisterhood does is about the education and awareness piece. And if we talk about these issues and some people want to cover their ears, that you can't go to someone and say it's not happening at all. You just that to me, just that attitude just blows my mind.
I also think that part of it comes to a misunderstanding of communication of what people are doing, because when you talk about like that sort of like schoolyard bullying aspect, I think these people don't really get it when they are just saying some really hurtful and sometimes disgusting things, and they're just going, oh, it's just joking, we're just joking. But they don't really get that a lot of people are not going to see that as a joke, even though their friends might see that as a joke. So when I am talking to people and we are sort of like we're in our games, and then they'll just say something which it will be obvious in the context of what they're saying with their friends that they are joking, or they're meant to be joking. But if you sort of like you separate it out of that context and you just like lay it out flat, it's really not okay. So it will be like, oh, of course you lost that fight because you're playing the girl character, and it's obvious that in context it's a joke, but by itself it's really gross.
Yeah.
But when things like this, like what corporates suffered on what other victims suffered, most of these people will be like, well, you exposed yourself to this, so now you have to suffer it. And like, so because I decided to speak up, now I have to suffer all this bullshit. Are you actually telling me it's my fault? And yeah, they will always blame you, no matter what the topic is, no matter what you said or you think. They always blame you because you expose yourself to this. And
And
it's a
just
mindset we,
imagine
yeah.
just imagine, just speaking up in chat as a woman can be enough, and yet it's your fault for doing that. It's your
Yeah.
fault for turning on your mic.
In fact, maybe later we'll talk about this, but in the Spanish community, someone was like warning that some of these guys who were talking about we have to change things because of what happened to Blizzard and Ubisoft, and she was like, be careful with these guys because they are as bad as the people they are criticizing. And there's so much abuse, and someone's like, and why don't you report it? And then she was like, because I don't want to suffer pure hell for speaking up, because it's bad for the victims. It's so sad and terrifying that just thinking about about calling out what's happening and speaking up about against abuse, it's just going to make your life pure hell.
Yeah,
But
one of
then
the
if you don't speak up, then
Yeah,
nothing's going to change if people don't
yeah,
challenge this
but
behavior and do it loudly. And it's almost like, when you're going to speak up about something like this, you just know you're going to have people coming back at you, saying horrible things to you. And I had this with the sisterhood, and I was quite public about it, posting, like, sharing my experiences and stuff, with just even, like, trying to create the safe space. People had a problem with that, and it was like, well, if general communities, some communities, weren't so toxic, then we wouldn't need to be carving a space out for ourselves. And it's that whole piece around, oh, like, why aren't we involved in this safe space? And it's like, well, we tried to be involved in the bigger communities, but then, we suffered lots of, really shitty behavior for just trying to speak up, saying, when you're challenging what people are saying. So then, are you surprised that we kind of broke off and tried to form our own safe space? And then they had a problem with that also?
Like a lot of that is because they see that as sort of like a discrimination against them. And they don't understand that we're having to create these safe spaces to get away from this discrimination against people who are looking for those safe spaces in the first place. It's sort of like you can dish it out, but you can't deal with it yourself sort of angle. And they don't get that that's sort of like a thing. Am I making sense?
some people
Yeah, you are.
just the words safe space seems to like cause this reaction in some people. Like they
yeah.
immediately go like, "Oh, you're woke trash,"
No,
just
they call you weak because you can handle you can handle life, because harassment is life for some reason.
one of the things I was wondering about. Many of us are members of community programs like Star Players or Mentors Guild, Delta Company, these kinds of programs. Is there something that you would like to see from the people who run these programs, your contact people from Ubisoft side? Is there something they could do to make you feel safe to express these opinions more openly in your communities?
I feel like with Mentors Guild, the community contacts are really good in like accepting criticism about like the company and what's going on. And if you say I'm worried about this, they'll do their best to answer your questions. So I don't have a problem with the individuals. What I do have a problem with was when the news came out in May that not a lot of changes had been put in place. All of their responses were very sort of like PR, fine, everything's okay, don't worry about it responses. And that was really annoying. Like it just felt like you were being stonewalled all the time. But I get that it's not their faults, but it's just quite frustrating. So there's like not really that like level of trust that I really want to give. And I feel like we're like 98% of the way there, but we can't quite go all the way because there's that worry about, like company image.
Do the rest of you have anything to share about that, like from the programs that you are in?
It's not really about the programs, but more the community in general. I'm listening to you girls talk about all those issues you have in your communities, and I feel like we are really lucky in the Division community because we don't have we have our fair share of sexism and discrimination, but I think the community management in our game has been pretty open about not accepting discrimination against women. And although they might not have expressed directly their frustration at what's going on within Ubisoft right now, they've always tried to speak up for women, whether they're women themselves or men. And this has created an environment for us to feel safe, to feel like we can express anything we want to express without fearing retaliation. I'm not saying we don't have any issues. We have a PvP community, so kind of like with Rainbow Six, we've had problems, similar stuff, where if you start speaking up in the PvP areas, you'll have people come at you. You're a girl. Ha ha ha! I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna rape you. We have that, and we have women who were victims of that and had to go as far as to delete their social media. So it's not something we don't have, but I think because the community management was proactive towards speaking up for women, even on their personal accounts, this has created a space that is that feels kind of safer for us. So what I would like to see maybe in other communities and in programs like the Star Player program is people being more proactive about creating a space for everyone, absolutely everyone. LGBTQ people, women, people of color, and really try to show at least that they do not accept discrimination. I don't know if that makes sense.
What would
Yeah,
that
that makes sense.
space look like to you? Do you mean like, for example, when you say being more proactive, for example, creating, say, more opportunities for female star players to appear on, let's say, live streams, or highlighting their content more, stuff like that?
I don't know if that's needed. It's really difficult for me to get the right perspective because my community feels really safer than all of yours. So I don't really know how they could do it, what actions they could use. But I know that just communicating on those issues on social media and saying this is not okay is a great start. Like, I think I remember there was some issue with a Rainbow Six at some point, and one of the devs directly addressed it on Twitter and was like, "This is not okay. We won't accept that." And I think this is what I would like to see more of to begin with, because this sends the message that, okay, the people who created those games are not okay with your attitude, guys. So this space is not for people like you who discriminate against somebody. And I think this is a great and simple and actionable beginning. It's easy to do. You don't need resources from the company. You just need to say, okay, I'm not okay with this as a person and as a developer of your game. So if they could do that more, I think that would be a great start.
I'm not saying that they don't already do this, but I think that all gaming companies need to be careful not to uplift people who have toxic communities and don't do anything about their toxic communities, because who you choose to reward really impacts like the state of your community and fandom going forward. And like I don't have a specific like example from the Ubisoft community. I feel like most people are pretty good. And then, you know, there's still some fandoms that are like trash fires. So some things are just like not connected like that. In terms of like say the Watch Dogs community, speaking as a moderator, we have really always been clamping down on and kind of toxic behavior. So I don't know if it's like hand in hand, our community is already less toxic, or if it's because we also really stringently enforce that kind of thing. I think that moderation is something that Ubisoft is not really like prioritizing. Like I wouldn't say that they really talk to moderators. They just kind of let us do our own thing in the individual communities. And then they're like, oh no, why is our fandom toxic? Or why is this fandom particularly good or whatever? And it comes down to moderation. Like they have no influence, they have no involvement with their fandoms. And so then it comes down to the mod teams to set the tone of what is acceptable for each game, to an extent, because I guess if you have like a huge fan base as well, then things get a little bit harder. But I think a good mod team can really turn around how a fandom or how a community acts or how they perceive things.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, we already kind of touched upon this, that Ubisoft's responses tend to be a bit more like very PR kind of, I don't know, neutral sounding. Like, how do you feel about the response that they had after all these allegations came to light, and uh, they said, we're committed to change, but some employees, former and current, have expressed that they feel like they haven't done enough, like that the changes that they've implemented have been mostly like arranging sensitivity training, but the people who need it most don't actually attend, and they kind of question if it's actually having an effect. Is How do you feel about their response? Do you feel like they've done enough to show their commitment?
I just wish that they would mostly be more transparent about the steps that they've taken. So, for example, if we're looking at what came out in July last year and then what came out in May this year, we kind of had to push them to say, what have you done and why, like, what have you done between then and now? And can you please elaborate on why people are still saying that they're getting, like, PR are still, or not PR, I mean, HR are still receiving complaints from employees about toxic behavior that other employees are having against them as late as December last year. And yeah, I just wish they were more transparent about what's going on. Yeah.
And I think as a community, like the Assassin's Creed community generally wants to see a bit more action rather than words, because, there's so many statements floating around from, various companies in which it's been revealed that this behavior is ongoing. So, you say things like, we have a zero tolerance policy, or these actions don't align with our values. And you kind of think to yourself, well, what are you actually doing about it? Instead of just posting sort of really generic statements, what are you doing? And I think the general consensus in the AC community, particularly the communities I'm part of, is that we want to see more action and we want to see what they are actually doing. We don't want to see just empty statements.
Exactly. I think a big problem with that is that if you are going into a company where you say 25% of the employees have experienced or have witnessed this misconduct, and then there's absolute near silence on what's going on, then you want more information about, okay, so you have like this high of misbehavior, and you've done, like, you're not really giving us a lot of information about what's going on, then can you tell us what's happening? Because I don't think you're going to wipe out that much misdemeanor overnight just because some people wrote articles about it.
And I think what's really sad about it as well is you're getting not only us as community members looking at all the news that's floating around, but also people in the industry. So if you're actually in the industry, if you're a developer or whatever, and you're looking at what's going on in the industry, and I've seen tweets and things from people who want to break into this industry saying, actually, I'm second guessing that now because I'm just seeing the state of what is going on, and it's clearly a systemic issue within the industry. And it's not just something that's happening at particular studios. It's not like a AAA studio issue. It's happening at the smaller studios. And it's really sad to see that, this talent is being completely put off by even stepping into the industry as well. And that kind of goes beyond just us as speaking as community. That's actually people in the industry.
I think that may be the only thing that pushes Ubisoft to do anything about their situation, because I don't know if you guys saw the earnings call note. They were talking about it in the chat, I think. And Ubisoft they did like a risk assessment, and they said, no one wants to work for our company. Everyone is leaving, and we don't know, why is this happening to us? And it's just it's amazing how self-aware they are of how their actions and promoting these perpetrators and not doing anything about the scandal, that's what's leading them to have all this turnover from their employees and people not wanting to work from them. But at the same time, they don't want to act on it. So I wonder, they're obviously not listening to us and us asking them for action and for actual changes. But maybe at some point, they're really struggling with keeping people and hiring people, they might do something. It doesn't feel like it would be for the right reasons, So that's what's really disappointing, is to keep seeing them be so lacking in integrity.
That was
Also, I think it's really short-sighted as well, because sure, it might not really be a problem that that you're not getting a brain drain right now if you're keeping the abusive people, but in 5 years, in 10 years, where are you going to be?
there was an article not too long ago talking about the CEO of Ubisoft, Yves Guillemot, that he has these metrics that determine his bonuses each year, and they had decided last year that some of the metrics that they were going to use to determine the size of his bonus was to base it on the gender-based initiatives that the company was going with. So, for example, they wanted to increase the size of their global female workforce across all the different studios around the world that Ubisoft has. But they changed that recently. That metric no longer exists. Now they're basing his bonus on, I think, reducing the carbon footprint of Ubisoft this year. So it's like, that kind of raises the question, are they actually committed to these gender-based initiatives? Because they can easily say, let's say that Ubisoft reduces their carbon footprint this year by so and so many percentages. They can say, oh, look, we did so well. Eve definitely deserves his bonus this year, when they could have, if they would have failed to meet those gender-based initiatives, he might not have earned so much. So that would have been a bad look for the company.
It's also so insidious, isn't it? You go oh, we're only going to give you more money if you meet these stats, which is just, it's horrible.
And
it's
I mean, because carbon-based footprint, that's an easier problem to tackle, right? It's like you can, I don't know, reduce the paper. You can reduce the paper waste that your company is producing each year, and hey, that shows us progress. But it's harder to show we hired this and this many women this year, because women are leaving the company because of all these problems. So it wouldn't look as good on paper.
And it's also that whole thing about you're not doing it to get a more gender diverse just like an experienced, diverse workforce, not you doing it to inflate the CEO's paycheck.
Mhm.
Oh boy, I didn't see it that way. It's really disappointing. But if I may give you my 2 cents about how you feel about Ubi's response. Okay, so back in 2019, when I was young and innocent, I went to E3 as a star player. I had a blast. And I really thought people at Ubisoft were super friendly, because they were. And the Rainbow Six devs and champion team are amazing. So I had no clue, and the whole scandal that came out in French newspaper hit me like a truck, like a real big truck full speed. And
Same.
so I for my fellow star players, because there was a lot of ladies at my promotion of star players, so I wanted to translate every article from French to English, so I would keep my fellow star player up to speed with everything going on. And so the journalist gave me the article so I could translate and give international coverage, which I did, and I worked for it for hours. It triggered PTSD for me. It gave me an outburst of anxiety and nightmares, but like real nightmares, for a whole month. And it really took a toll on my mental health. And I always felt safe with Ubisoft, but one of the guy who was mentioned in the newspaper, we saw him at E3. He was presented to us, and I saw a few red flags in his behavior, and I was feeling guilty because I felt ungrateful, because all I could see was the red flag instead of whatever he was talking about. And how can I say? Yeah, when his name was revealed in the paper, I thought of all the ladies who went to take picture with him and everything, and I felt so bad, and it really, really impacted me. And when there was the UB Forward, right after like 2 weeks after the newspaper, the first newspaper article, they said, sorry guys, we're not gonna edit the Ubisoft Forward because it's too short. Everything has been recorded. Like, you cannot record your bloody CEO for a
Yeah.
10 minutes
Yeah.
speech 2 weeks prior the fucking Ubisoft Forward. Like, why? At least try to pretend that you care. It was such a huge letdown. I was devastated as a star player, as I, I don't know how to say. I felt safe and engaged, and I thought people shared my values, my principles, and it all went downhill so fast, and I was so disappointed. And every time I translated more, and I saw just PR responses like, "Yeah, we know," and nothing changing. Like the guys who were discussed in the article got to leave. Not fired, they got to leave.
With a golden handshake.
Right?
All of them.
All of them.
It's not just those in the articles. There wasn't something happened at Ubi Massive, which is the main developer for the division, and the person also got to basically walk away.
And it brings me to saying that French culture in general favors rape culture. Like, if a woman gets in trouble, first thing we ask in France is what is she wearing and stuff like that. And I mean, my country is a disaster, okay? But rape culture is really a thing, and the fact that Ubisoft is a French company, I think, plays a role, because Frenchies know they can basically do whatever with little repercussions. Like, and it's so disappointing. I really thought Ubisoft had it different, but no, we're French.
They are very much French, and to the point where people in different countries say that you have more chances to be promoted if you're French. It goes that far.
And
Yeah, there was news about Ubisoft Singapore
Yeah.
recently where they talked about that
Yeah.
they get subsidies from the Singaporean government because they are ostensibly bringing jobs into the country by employing people at the studio, but the reality of actually progressing to higher positions is that they tend to favor French people, like they just fly them in from outside the country.
yeah, I'm not surprised. And
I
somebody
really
said the
surprised.
French mafia. It's funny in the chat. French mafia. I think we can bribe everyone with cheese. That's how it works.
So I
I
think it's
really
really important to acknowledge that this isn't just like a French problem, because otherwise we wouldn't be seeing these problems with something like Activision Blizzard, which they're American. So
No, it's like it is an industry wide thing, no matter where you are in the world, I think. And I think the thing that's worrying is when these people leave, they end up joining other studios. And then that they kind of take that toxic, mentality with them, which is really, when you think about that, that's really scary. Like nothing's done to sort of break that chain. If if you're perpetrating this really really toxic behavior, and you kind of just walk out of a studio, that doesn't stop you from going somewhere else and carrying on that behavior, and that's really scary.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
think
especially if you're not fired, if you're just let go and you're given,
Absolutely.
like a leave package, and it's like,
yeah, and what we need to have in mind as well that Ubisoft is one of the biggest gaming companies in the world. So if anyone leaves Ubisoft or like Ubisoft should be like act like a role model, like how to handle employees, how to give or to support employees. And with those recent news, and now also with Activision Blizzard also being a massive gaming company, we have like two big companies that at one point trains developers and their own employees, maybe engulf them in this toxic atmosphere and kind of quote unquote teach them that for years it was all right to act on that. And then they venture out to different companies, let it be indie studios or other big gaming companies. And I think this is like also a big point that like two of the biggest companies in the gaming industry have been revealed to have held toxic environments, and for years nothing had been done against it.
I think the scariest thing about that is Ubisoft and Activision Blizzard, they're the big ones. So if anything, because they have more employees, there's more chance for this news to come out. And then if you look at studios which only have like 20 employees or 30 employees, then if this is a wide problem, then we don't know how far that spreads, because there's less chance of news coming out like that with studios that have less employees and less sort of, I guess, like media presence, that you have all these problems which can just quietly simmer away and nothing will ever get done about them, because companies like Ubisoft and Activision Blizzard, they're getting all of like the heavy fire, but all these little ones just sort of get away scot-free with it.
Well, even
And I think-
Riot got away scot-free, and they're not a small company at all.
Mm.
It was funny seeing people mentioning Riot on Twitter to report people who had moved there from Activision, because it seems like the memory of social media is really short and people don't remember that Riot also had these problems and nothing was done about it.
But I'm surprised that with all that is happening with Ubisoft and Blizzard and all this, and even Quantic Dream, I'm surprised that no one is mentioning Riot, because not so long ago there were reports about its CEO being a massive abuser, and somehow people forgot about it during these weeks. I don't like, but what about this company too?
I do remember that Riot
Yeah,
also like promised changes, and I think a
yeah,
lot of people kind of take these companies at their word without really following up on it afterwards.
Yeah,
I
but
think
they
what
promised that
happened with Ubisoft. Yeah.
they could
Sorry.
investigate their CEO because there were serious reports about him abusing one of the employees or several employees. I don't remember well. And in the end, the statement was that they couldn't find any evidence. So they dropped the topic and like, no one is going to talk about this. Like they're going to, avoid the topic, leave it, put it aside, and that's it. Like, it's far from being over.
Just because so many people, like, they want to be able to enjoy the product, and
Yeah.
I mean, and so they want to think that something has happened, or there's some people that just don't care, and they're like, well, how is this going to affect my games? Like in the case of Riot, they released KDA, so I don't know if that had any influence on the public thinking like forgetting about all of it. And then their gamer base for League of Legends is already pretty toxic, so I don't expect them to care. I think it also just comes back to Ubisoft, though. With the Ubisoft stuff, like, there are people who don't want to think too hard about these scandals because they're conflicted. And I wouldn't even say it's a bad thing. I think that a lot of us are conflicted. I know I was conflicted. Like, how am I supposed to engage with these things moving forward if Ubisoft is not committing to fixing the situation for the employees who worked on them? And like knowing people who worked on the games, there's like that I don't know what to do about, like, am I supporting them? Is it like, am I doing something bad by supporting the games themselves for the people who worked on them? Or like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so, I didn't know what to do. That was when Dalka was talking about her experience of like feeling like everything was crashing down. That's also how I felt because I think a lot of us built our identities around Ubisoft for the last couple of years. And then to find out that this company we thought was better than Riot, was better than all these other companies, was actually really shitty to its employees, that it felt like that was something about ourselves as well. Like, how do you separate that out from yourself after you've been building Ubisoft into your like personality as a content creator, as a community member? So I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And what for me was a very big point was I have friends among developers, the community team. I mean, it happens if you're a star player or part of any community program that you not necessarily only find people you can align with, but also found friends within the employees of Ubisoft. And my first initial thought was like, wow, they need to endure this as well for some reason. And maybe, I mean, some people said they didn't know about that, which is on one point kind of, well, hard to grasp if you hear so many people speaking up that it is like a widespread issue. But I still feel so sorry for those that are like affected by this. And I always hear from friends as well how they are unhappy with this whole situation, even though it has been like, let it be last year when it came up that they were speaking up like, well, we have endured this all the time, we have known this, and now it's like time to change. But even they were not happy on the pace Ubisoft were set. And even though you can imagine that changing a whole working culture might take years, it is still something that upsets not only us as community members, but also people within the company.
I was thinking, we talked earlier about, of course, with COVID-19, all these live events that used to happen, E3, Gamescom, all these, they've been sort of disrupted. But is there something that you guys think Ubisoft and these other companies could do to make live events safer for fans and developers?
I
To
think
me,
the
maybe. Oh,
sorry. I think like the most obvious first step would be look at the people that you're sending to present your company and make sure that they're not, terrible people. But that's also something that's easier said than done.
mhm. I think we need less alcohol-related events. I mean, I don't drink, so I've already been like, oh, why is everything, there's so much like pressure, I think, within their companies already for drinking culture, and we've seen how that's influenced a lot of these incidences within their companies. But after all that came out, it really kind of shone a spotlight on how dangerous it was, that there was just like free flowing alcohol. And then you had these people put in a place where they can just freely mingle with fans. No one was really watching out for fans. And a lot of them were really young. They were like starstruck. You have these devs that you really looked up to who you think are really cool. I think it's inevitable that it was a risk. Like those are really risky situations. So it's kind of irresponsible for a lot of these parties to have been set up in the way that they were.
Yeah, I agree. And there are people who cannot control themselves towards alcohol. We know that it's not specific to the game industry. It's just something that we know. Yet, when you go to those parties, you have really so much alcohol all over the place and free access to it and no, absolutely zero restriction. And I think it wouldn't kill the party to just put restrictions in place. And it would make everyone safer because both the victims and the perpetrators can drink too much, and it leads to boundaries being, vague, and it can only bring problems. So it wouldn't be that much of an effort to control a little bit more the flow of alcohol in parties, even without completely banning it. And yet it's not done, and it's something that you see everywhere else. When you're at an company event. I used to work in the banking industry, and when I went to parties like that, there was control in place to make sure that people wouldn't end up completely wasted. And I don't understand that I couldn't see that anywhere at the E3 I went to.
I also, I don't know if this makes me sound uptight, but what you mentioned about there's sort of people being starstruck, especially if they're younger. They're meeting their heroes, their favorite creators. They get to talking and they feel like this is a person that's really cool, person that I can trust. Um, and yet we know that these abuse cases happened also with fans. Um, I feel like there should be more restrictions since we know that this happens, even with people who are ostensibly, they seem cool to the people who know them, or at least people who think they know them. Yet I feel like there should be sort of this restriction, for example, that um, events should say end at a certain time and devs and fans go their own separate ways. No situations where it's like one dev leaving with a fan and saying, "Oh, I'm just escorting her to the hotel or whatever." Yeah, I don't know how the rest of you guys feel about that.
I gotta say, for the Rainbow Six Siege community, I felt safe. I protect myself due to previous events. I protect myself, and I will do everything in my power not to put myself in a risky situation. But I had friends, actual friends in the Rainbow Six Siege devs, very decent people, and people you can count on. Even I could even crash at someone's place, one of them, for the major Six Invitational, and they were amazing. And I'm very grateful that both Rainbow Six Siege Studios and Anno Studios, because Anno is an amazing game, underrated. They're safe, and I feel safe. And honestly, I've been kind of negative since the beginning of this, but I'm grateful that Rainbow Six Siege and Anno community make me feel safe, at least during when I go to Ubisoft Paris or stuff like that. when we are all before COVID, we used to be invited to Ubisoft Paris studio to test new seasons before they're released, so we can test and analyze new gameplay, and streamers can record it. And we've always been, I always felt safe, and it was always nice, really. I only got threshold because I was using a controller, and that's about it. So it's rather nice.
Yeah, I do have to say that I've also been a bit negative, but overall, my experience with Fora, with both like the dev interactions I've had and with the general community, has been really good. But there are those sort of like lingering problems where you go like, oof, that's always a bit weird or insensitive or uncomfortable or whatever. Most of the time, it's been great. I've had a ball.
Yeah, for me, it's everyone that I have had experiences with has been really, really nice. I think I was really trusting looking back on it. So the thing that I'm a little bit like worried about is like, you know how they have like employee whisper networks and they talk about people or whatever. But like we don't have access to that as fans unless another fan tells you like, oh, this person is, don't be alone with them or whatever. And there are a lot of situations where you could be alone with just one person, like just one dev, just one, employee. And so I wonder if everything was being done behind the scenes by people to like protect fans from being placed with known perpetrators. Like that's what's really kind of bothering me in hindsight.
Yeah, and I do remember hearing that there was something like that going on. People who know people, and they just sort of arrange these situations where they can be alone. And because they're friends, they sort of trust each other. Oh, I'm sure nothing bad's gonna happen. That's the thing with me. Why I'm saying, obviously we have friends among the devs, people that we really trust. I also have friends that I definitely trust and that I think are really cool people, and really understand these issues. But there are also, it's like people that you never would have expected this from, who were revealed as perpetrators, and it was, a big shock for many of us. And that's why I feel like no matter no matter how much you think you know someone, when it's in a professional setting like that, I feel like there should be these safeguards, like keep fans separate, keep devs separate. When at the end of the night, when everybody's sloshed with alcohol or whatever, just kind of tell people this party's going on until, I don't know, 12 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah.
And then everybody goes their separate ways. None of these situations where you have someone, a dev, going home with a fan or something like that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think from my personal experiences, they've all been sort of positive with the events that I've been to that have been organised by Ubisoft. But I think with anything, and this goes for other industries as well, there is, when you go to these events, particularly when you have community members there is a potential for abuse of position and power. And that's what I was hearing from, community members who were speaking out, and that has to be managed. And I think the suggestions that people have put forward are all very sensible. But it is that abuse of power that is worrying.
Yes, very.
Just avoiding really one-on-one encounters during those events. Avoiding people, like you say, going one-on-one, a fan with a dev, or just avoiding that kind of meetings. Whatever they want to do after the show is up to them, but at least during the show, some people need to remain sober and, monitor everything. It's not funny because usually the parties are at the end of events, so everybody wants to relax because everything went fine. But maybe not chaperone, but maybe chaperone actually.
You
And
can have
and
fun
maybe
and not be and stay sober. It's possible.
I know, but we're talking about gaming industry. That's
Yeah.
usually the other way around.
Yeah.
It's sad that it has come to this because it places the burden on female fans mostly.
Exactly.
Like, we can't take part in these things, or we have to be extra careful or whatever, instead of just, get rid of like garbage people in your studios as soon as something happens, instead of forcing like a particular subset of fans to be extra wary or not be able
Or
to
even-
like talk with a dev one-on-one.
Or even get, like female devs to look out for you in place of if other fans can't do it. It's just way more responsibility that needs to be placed on other people unnecessarily, just because some people are garbage. So
For sure.
That's why I feel like these events need more structure, because at least, I was one of the first star players in 2015. So that it was still sort of finding its feet. And I think they have a little bit more structure these days. But at least my experiences back then were sort of, we didn't always have a schedule. We were just sort of whatever, roaming around the city with each other, or then maybe in the evening there was a party, but it was mostly for the industry, like leaders to mingle with each other, and the fans were just sort of, oh, go drink or whatever. We don't really have a program for you, and since I don't drink either, it was kind of boring for me. Um, but I feel like there should be structure. These events could maybe there could be like stricter schedules. It should just be a little bit less like do whatever you feel like, or leave having these situations where people are left to their own devices, and maybe being in these situations where it's easier for someone to take advantage.
It was more strict when I went in 2017, at least. And I think like you can still have opportunities for fans to interact with devs, but just like in a place where like we had like the game room and they were just there. So they could talk to you, but it wasn't like, oh, you're free to go wander the city and no one knows where you are, kind of thing, like it sounds like it was for the early days.
Because
Yeah,
there was
the
one
same.
point during that we had these like party events, and there was a situation that made me slightly uncomfortable, where someone like suggested something to me, like that would have left me alone with them, and I didn't really feel safe in that situation, and it was a little bit uncomfortable for me to like try to navigate that, try to get out of the situation. They, maybe they had decent intentions, maybe it was friendly, but you never know. That's the thing. And it just would have been nice, I think, if there was someone to sort of, I guess, someone to be around, like more security, maybe to kind of prevent those situations, to take the pressure off of women from finding themselves in these situations where somebody maybe corners you and just like pressures you into coming with them.
Yeah, the last E3 was very safe on that point. We were monitored all the time. I asked for free time at some point, and I really had to ask for it several times before they let me do it. And people who managed the star player were as shocked as we were to find out about the misconducts and everything. And we were really we couldn't stay at the party for too long because everybody had to get back at some point at the hotel all together. So it was really safe, and really we're surrounded by them all the time. We could ask them anything. It was really safe, to be honest.
I'm really glad to hear that if they made these changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for me, when I went first in 2014, and there was a lot of free time, and where you kind of just were wandering around yourselves. But then when I went again in 2017, there was a big difference between the scheduling and the events that were available to the star players. So I think it's getting better, and I hope it's going to get better. But yeah, I think the industry party is the bit where, for me personally, I just feel like there's probably a lot more work to be done, particularly if you're inviting community members to them as well.
we're sort of coming up on time, actually. I would just
So,
like. Sorry?
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, the other thing that we have got to discuss is like the what we can do going forward. But I think we're getting there.
Sorry, can you
So
repeat that?
I was going to say, I would like to still talk about the things that we can do going forward, like if you choose to boycott
Yes,
or
that was
what
going to
we
be
do.
my like
Yeah, so
final question to you all. What can fans do to encourage change within the industry?
Oh,
Like things like spreading awareness,
um,
donating to organizations that help women or abuse survivors, calling for regular progress updates on these things like that. How do you guys
uh,
feel?
first of all, it will be listening to the victims, but not like, oh no, I'm sorry about what happened. I wish we could. No, listen to them and spend time like analyzing why it happened. And trying to figure out what can be done to change things for the future, so no other victim has to suffer the same. Like listen to them for once, and try to support them as much as you can, because for a long time these victims have been hiding because they couldn't speak up, or they were terrified, and the moment they did, they were dismissed or ignored when they finally took that step. So the most important as a first step will be to listen to the victims.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
let them know that you are ready to listen. Let them know that you will believe whatever they had to say. Like what happened at Massive was revealed by a person because she was seeing other victims speaking up, and I left a message saying that we should trust the victims and let them speak and give them a space. And she replied to that, maybe it's time that I speak up. And I really wanted other people to say, to write it down on Twitter, even if it's just social media. I believe you, because it's important that those people hear other people tell them that they believe what they said, and that there's not just this messaging from toxic people saying, oh, you're lying, you just want attention. We need to cut through this, and we need to let them know that we are listening. We're actually listening, not just for a minute, not just for like the attention span on social media is unfortunately very short. And I just wish that we could make it less short, and that that the victims will know that they can speak up and will be listened to.
Yeah, but
And it's
when
especially important for men to be vocal about this.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
especially
Men need
that.
to listen. That's exactly what Angie said. Men need to listen just, and not take a stance on social media to be a knight in shining armor, but just take a stance and stick to it in real life, and not make it about them, about how they can shine in that situation. Just please listen, be allies. And for fans, money runs the world. If the company that you follow doesn't take action, then boycott. People were on boycotting Blizzard for a day, and I think that's how you impact a society, really. Like you boycott, you cut the money at the source, and they will have to do something, even if it's just some PR stuff. If everybody boycotts, if there is a shortage of money,
I
then
have
that's something.
I have a question about that to ask you. I feel like this is also going to harm the people who work for the company and who are either victims or just simply regular good people.
I mean,
So,
I
That's
don't
what I was
think
also
devs
going
are
to say.
paid according to the number of game that are sold.
Um, because my concern with doing like the financial boycott is that like they won't want to cut the pay of like the highest earning employees, whether that be like the directors or the CEOs or whatever it is. And so I feel like financial boycott will eventually lead to job cuts and pay cuts to sort of like preserve that money. So I think the best way to do boycotts is just to keep talking about it, keep offering support, and also there's that sort of like that double-edged sword about like, well, I don't want to stop playing the games I like. I mean, I don't want to stop playing For Honor. I don't want to stop playing other things, even though the company that produces them has garbage people in it and garbage management in it. So, yeah, the best way I think is to make people aware in your communities that this is happening. If you are in a game and you have people like harassing you, you have to sort of point out, hey, this isn't okay. And if it's just going to be met with vitriol, then you can say, okay, um, maybe like I don't want to sort of like get into sort of like the argument philosophy, but just sort of like say, hey, you're a dick. Can you think about why you're saying this? Or I don't know exactly how to respond to that, but more so instead of just I don't know.
When I say
And
boycott,
like
I don't mean actual boycotting. I mean, when it comes to me, boycotting is easy because I cannot separate the problems from the game. Like, if I left a game that people as garbage people in it, it's the only thing I will think about, and it will ruin it for me because I have PTSD and stuff like that, and I cannot separate the entertainment from the issue. But I was talking more about the Blizzard boycott they made for a whole day, not streaming, not talking, not doing anything related to Blizzard, and the CEO actually stepped out, I think. Not maybe
yeah,
not really, but that's
Yeah,
more
because
of a
I feel
one-time
like
boycott,
with
Black Day.
something like Ubisoft, because it's been going on for such a long time, because it's been a couple of months since these renewed allegations have come out, it's more important to keep talking about it. So, if, like for example, what I've done is I've stopped. I've said, okay, I'm not going to create any more For Honor content. I'm not going to draw for it anymore. I'm not going to create any more videos for it. And I'm just going to every time I mention it, it's either going to be about like what's happening here or how you can help. So
And I
that's
think
my
just
sort of boycott. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that just the decision itself, the decision to boycott itself is such a personal decision, um, as to whether or not you want to do that, and that comes down to the individual person, I think. Like Dilkamara says, you can't separate what's happening from the game, but other people can, and it just displays how that is kind of a personal decision. But I think going forward, what I would like to see more is people who have a lot of influence and with big followings talking more about what is going on and just keeping the awareness going. It's not something that you should be just going, all shocked Pikachu when a news story breaks, because it's just the cycle you see online of a news story breaking, people being really shocked for like a day and then moving on, and then not talking about it again. I think it's really important that the conversation continues and people with followings are actively talking about it as well.
In my
Um,
case, it's like, um, like we talked about earlier, is that many of us have sort of like almost formed our entire online presence around these games. And that's the case for me as well. Like I post a lot of Assassin's Creed content, and um, for me, it's like because I'm so invested in these games, that sort of gives me the energy and the investment to keep on fighting for the things around those games and like the injustices that I see in the real world. So it's like I deal with so much, like I follow so many of these negative news, and I do my best to like keep up the awareness and talk about it, but at the same time I need to be able to keep enjoying the games in my own way in order to have that passion. Because if I like lose my interest in the games and the company completely, then I'm just sort of like, fuck it, nothing matters. I'll just find another hobby. I'll move on. I won't even talk about this stuff anymore. But because I'm so invested in these games, I'm also invested in making things better. So that's why I personally am still like enjoying the games in my own way and posting content about them, and also at the same time trying to talk about the problems as well. So it's like trying to do both at the same time.
Yeah, I feel the same.
About
So the same as that.
I was talking about listen to the victims. I wanted to add that many men, when they listen to the victims, they are so new to what's happening because they haven't been exposed enough to this kind of topics. Most of the time, when they try to react to what is happening, they end up, well, not all of them, obviously, but they end up being really toxic because they want to do a lot suddenly and say things that aren't okay or that are hurting the victims and causing more damage. So I wanted to add that besides listening to them, they also I want to also ask them to not be afraid to ask what they can do to be better or to change things for better, because no, it shows like to the victims and to those who want to make things better that they want to help, and it also gives the feeling that we aren't alone in this fight. So it's really important to not be afraid to be educated, and especially to ask what they can do to improve everything.
Yes,
Like
and
one of the most powerful things that a man can do in a real life situation or online when you're like playing a game together in a group and somebody says something sexist, you know, for that man to call them out, say
Yeah.
like, hey man, that's fucked up. Please don't do that.
In
That's
fact,
like a huge thing. It's like it really creates a safe feeling for me. Like,
Yes.
hey,
yeah.
somebody is on my side.
In fact, over
I think
Twitter,
that's the best thing that you can do if you're a man. Just say, hey, this isn't okay. You see that sort of behavior.
in fact over Twitter, I think I said it like several times. I'm like, uh, to all the men who follow me, do not be afraid. Never be afraid to step up and defend anyone who is suffering any kind of harassment, because even if they call you a simp or gay or whatever, do not be afraid, because you defending this person sends a powerful message that will obviously show to these people who just want to ruin everything that they're fighting against an army. So, well, like, if you want to be toxic, you can leave, because we're gonna let you win in any way. So it's really important for them to step up and say, look, your attitude is hurting people. We do not accept this. Um, Please correct your behavior or just leave.
I also think it's really important because a few of us have said, like, yeah, we have these problems, but our community is really good. And whilst that may be true, it's also really important to make sure it keeps staying good. So if you see any bad behaviors come out, but then you've also heard someone say, oh no, the community's actually fine, it's also your job to make sure that that keeps staying fine so people still have good experiences there.
indeed. And
Um,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that we can actually achieve everything or to make it all better. It's like a group effort. It's not like only that we as women need to get together, but also the man and non-binary people and trans people that are in these communities to spread awareness, to speak up, and to be together to not give toxic environment any chance to keep on being like, I don't know, the status quo in many online communities, but to make an actual change. And this is only that we can achieve together.
I just have another quick question that I want to just have to I mean what's the word, like, ask the floor about what to do. So say that you're a dude and you're in a group chat with a bunch of other people, and then one of someone that you really like in that group chat says something which you're not comfortable with, but you're also not comfortable in calling that behavior out because you don't want to lose credit with the group, you don't want to lose face with the group. What can you do to combat that, do you think?
You can start joking about it, like saying something, but in a joking way. So you're not a buzz killer, but you're just pointing something out and see how other people react. So you can know if you can trust the people in the group or not on the subject. But I'm a jester. So that's what I do all the time. I joke about everything. So that's humor is my main mechanism.
I mean, to
Do
be
you need
honest, many things will or are like meant as a joke. So why can't stuff like that also not start like as a joke? You know?
You could have sexist jokes by asking someone to explain it. Like, really explain why it's funny. Just explain
yes,
it to me. Like, you play dumb, so they can really start to explain and look like the idiots they are. It's a fine technique. It
yes,
works.
that's a powerful tactic because, when you say turn it into a joke, I think you mean that sort of turn it around on them, not like going with it. Like if somebody calls someone a bad name with a slur, uh, not to actually, you know, punch down, but to punch up at the joke. Say, "Oh, that's that's fucked up, man. Why did you say that? What makes it funny to you?" or something like
Yeah.
that. Something that calls them out, and not that you're making fun of the person who is like the butt of the joke.
So you're
Yeah.
speaking the same language but educating them.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, that
Or
reminds.
you can DM the person. You can send them a private message like, "Hey, I wasn't comfortable with what you said earlier. Can you explain this to me?" Or like, "Were you serious? Were you joking?" Um, you know, kind of check on the situation without like calling them out publicly if you're not comfortable with that, but still showing that you don't agree with them.
I think the problem with calling people out privately is that then anybody else who is in that room who might have been the butt of that joke feels like nobody stood up for them.
True.
And I think it's really important for it to publicly, like, this might also just be like my moderator self talking, because I do not have an answer for this question that isn't just like call them out immediately on their bullshit. Because that's just how I handle things now in this mindset. People will just leave. If somebody comes in, they see toxic jokes someplace, they're not going to feel comfortable if no one has spoken up against them. And I don't know if even like jokingly responding to them is enough sometimes. Like sometimes I'll be like, this place is kind of toxic. I don't really see myself hanging out here a lot if everything is always treated as a joke all the time, you know? So I think there's some seriousness if you want to maintain a positive community. Like I think people have to, like, I know that it's uncomfortable to approach people, but sometimes that's the only thing that stops people from mentioning these things again. Like we're letting people get away with too much by giving them some room to save face when they say horrible things.
I think one of the biggest problems with sort of like we were talking about like toxic behaviors at like tournaments and stuff before is that it's because it's the culture, so people go along with it even if they don't feel comfortable. They disagree with it because, oh, it's just what everybody else is doing. This is the correct thing to do. And if you have enough people thinking that but no one's speaking up, then of course the problem doesn't get solved, and you have like 10% of the people who do actually think what they say ruining it for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And it does once again put the pressure on women to sort of just be okay with it. And, you know, even if you ask them privately later, like, "Hey, are you okay? Were you okay with that joke that somebody made earlier?" we kind of feel like we have to say, "Oh, it's no problem," "Oh, I'm fine," even if we're not, because we're just sort of conditioned to do that.
Yeah,
So I do think you're right that calling these things out publicly is better.
yeah. In fact, I remember there was a controversy with someone who made a joke about one of the abuses in the Assassin's Creed community, and when several women stood up like to tell him that it wasn't okay, he apologized, but suddenly an army of men came to dismiss what happened, that calling us because we were exaggerating and making things worse for nothing. And I'm like, but he made a joke about an abuser, and we explained why it isn't okay. And things escalated quickly because there was this war between, you know, those who were trying to educate about what happened and those who were trying to dismiss it because it was just a joke. So yeah, it's very important to bring more education about this kind of actions.
And that's why you should call it out, even if it's just a joke, because if you don't, people are going to think that they can always dismiss everything as a joke. They're
And
gonna.
also, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm such a bad interrupter. I was also going to say that like if you want to see like this like persistence, which is the key in action, you can just look at something, like the like attack helicopter gender joke. Like 5 years ago, people were like all on board with that, and it was like the funniest thing ever. But now, if you look at when people say that, they go like, "Are you still serious about that? Can you not just grow up?" And it's not okay. So it's good to be persistent about things that are not good.
Yeah, I think there's a
Nutshell.
lot that needs to be done or that we can do. And as you see, there's a lot to talk about that, but I think we should probably
Yes, I
try.
was going to say that we I really love the discussion we've been having here, but I know that some of us have some things that they need to do in real life, some really busy things. One of you was going to catch a train or something, and
Sorry.
I don't I don't want to take too much of everybody's time, but I've really enjoyed this discussion and want to thank all of you for being here today and the chat as well, for everybody who showed up for the stream.
Yes.
Yeah,
So thank you.
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking part. And I'm looking forward to maybe more roundtables like these, maybe with more specific topics.
Yeah.
Or just, to come together because it was really interesting to see the point of view from different communities that we mostly don't have like much contact with.
Yeah, that's always great to hear. I think like you could even have a roundtable for like cosplayers or fan artists or moderators because there's just so much related to being a fan that could be addressed from this angle.
Definitely.
And we would love to see that, more collaborations between communities and within the communities themselves to discuss these important topics.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And to show up, it's not only like quote unquote only like an Assassin's Creed thing, but it is actually a widespread condition that needs to be changed.
To be called out.
Having a community conversation like this is really eye-opening for people like me, where my community is really friendly, and I realized that this is not the case everywhere, and that we should be doing more in terms of spreading awareness on those issues.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you all so much. We really appreciate you taking us. We're all in different time zones, so it was a bit difficult to arrange us all being at the same time. But I'm so happy that we were able to do this. I'm so thankful to all of you.
Thank you for the
Thank you
invite.
for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this makes the first community roundtable, and I hope you enjoyed everything around it. And I think this will go up on YouTube, so if you have anything in concern, you can leave a comment. Or if you are part of the Discord server, there will be also a discussion about that. And so far, thank you everyone again.
Thank
And
you, Sunny, for lending your channel to the cause.
I mean, it's the least thing I can do, so I was happy to do that. So yeah, maybe we'll see each other
And
again
thank you
soon.
to the chat as well again.
Yeah, and
And
also
to
for
all the viewers.
and to the moderators. You have done a
Yes, thank
great
you,
job.
mods.
All right, then I will conclude the stream here and the discussion, and I would say have a great evening, day, wherever you are.
Yes.
Stay healthy, keep hydrated, and hope to see you soon. Goodbye.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.